I'm riding the college streetcar, watching the city that literally built my brain pass by the window. New research shows that where we grow up during our first 15 years doesn't just influence us, it physically rewires our brain structure in ways that last our entire lives. Urban environments create specific neural patterns that determine how we'll respond to change, stress, and creativity for decades to come. Right now, my brain is struggling to reconcile the neighborhood I remember with what I'm seeing. This isn't just nostalgia, it's actual neurological disruption happening in real time. Understanding how cities shape our brains changes everything about how we think about belonging, change, and resilience. Because it turns out, the same urban complexity that can overwhelm us is also what makes our brains remarkably adaptable. In high school, I became obsessed with photographing urban life, abandoned buildings, after-hours parties, graffiti, alleyways full of strangers partying or littered with beer bottles, cycles of life, destruction, play, and chaos. It felt like I was documenting something essential about how places hold memory. But when another friend started taking photos too, my brain interpreted that as a territorial threat. Our brains don't just create maps of physical space, they create maps of emotional significance. And my brain had encoded photography as part of my urban identity territory. So I tried to escape by creating a double life in different neighborhoods with different friends and different events. But I couldn't outrun my own programming. Whether I was at a high school dance or downtown at a club, I was carrying the same brain patterns that said, there isn't room for both of us in this space. It's the same pattern I see now when creative people get triggered by others doing similar work, when entrepreneurs panic about competition in the field. We're all just protecting territory that feels essential to our survival. A few years later, I moved to Montreal and started writing about neighborhood change for the student newspaper. I was still fascinated by urban transformation, how buildings, communities, and entire areas evolve over time. And when I wrote about these changes, people got intensely angry. They accused me of romanticizing displacement, of not understanding what neighborhood change really means to people who live there. I didn't understand that when familiar places disappear or transform, our brains experience what neuroscientists call environmental grief. It's not metaphorical. Our brains contain specialized cells that create mental maps of familiar places. When these places change dramatically, these cells become unstable and start misfiring. The brain regions that process emotional pain activate the same way they do when we lose a person we love. Studies show that people experiencing rapid neighborhood change can have actual structural changes in their brains, specifically in the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory and spatial navigation. The stress of environmental disruption can shrink this region by 20%. So when people get upset about gentrification or urban development, they're not being dramatic. They're experiencing real neurological disruption of their brain's fundamental organization. It's the same disruption that happens when we outgrow our business models, when our creative work evolves beyond what feels familiar, or when our whole life structure needs to change. The key insight is this: gradual environmental change allows our brains to adapt and actually get stronger, but sudden changes overwhelm our neural capacity for adjustment. I stopped my writing series because I couldn't handle triggering other people's environmental grief. But I was also protecting my own neural circuits from the stress of criticism. My brain interpreted creative criticism as an environmental threat and responded exactly as it had been wired to respond. It turns out that our brains use the same neural circuits for creative territory as they do for physical territory. When I felt threatened by my friend's photography, and when people felt threatened by my writing on urban decay and renewal, we were all experiencing the same fundamental brain response. The regions that encode, "this is my creative space," are the same ones that encode, "this is my neighborhood." Our brains literally can't tell the difference between someone moving into our physical community and someone moving into our creative community. This explains why creative criticism can feel so existentially threatening, and why we sometimes try to stop other people from creating when our own creative identity feels unstable. Why launching something new can feel like leaving home. Why pivoting our work can trigger the same grief as losing a place we love. When I criticize my friend's photography as superficial, I was using my brain's territorial defense system to protect what felt like my creative home. When people later criticized my writing for aestheticizing poverty, they were doing exactly what I had done. We think we're protecting important values when we police other people's creative expression, but neurologically, we're often just trying to control environmental change by controlling other people's perspectives on it. Here's the pattern. When we feel our creative territory is threatened, we activate the same stress responses our brains use for physical displacement. We try to create stability by limiting other people's creative exploration. But this actually works against how our brains are designed to function. Urban environments train our neural circuits for adaptation, precisely because they expose us to constant creative and spatial variability. The same complexity that feels threatening is actually what makes our brains so remarkably flexible. Now I understand something I missed for years. We fight urban change so hard because we're terrified of personal change. When buildings get torn down, when neighborhoods transform, when the whole character of a place shifts, it activates our deepest fear circuits. Because if the city can transform beyond recognition, what does that say about us? Are we allowed to transform too? Can our work evolve? Can our whole identity shift? The same environmental variability that feels so threatening is actually what builds our capacity for resilience. Every time we navigate a new route, explore a changed neighborhood, or adapt to urban complexity, we're strengthening the exact brain circuits we need for handling future changes. Urban environments are essentially training grounds for neural adaptability. Navigating urban complexity requires constant neural adaptation. Even brief exposure to natural elements within urban environments, just 15 to 60 minutes in parks or green spaces, can reset our stress response systems and restore our brain's capacity for adaptation. The goal is not to escape urban complexity. It's to engage with it in ways that build rather than deplete our neural resources, whether that's in our neighborhoods, our creative practice, or the work we're building in the world. Every environmental choice becomes an opportunity to strengthen our brain's adaptation circuits, rather than just survive them. So here I am, riding the same streetcar that helped wire my brain for urban fascination decades ago, and I finally understand what I would tell my younger self. Just keep going. Your brain is designed for adaptation, not just survival. Those neural pathways you're building for finding beauty in urban complexity, for creating meaning from spatial relationships, for seeing patterns in city life, these aren't strange obsessions. They're your brain learning its most authentic language. When people get upset about your creative work, they're often experiencing their own environmental grief. Their criticism isn't really about your work. It's about their own neural relationship to change, to territory, to who gets to tell stories about the places that shaped them. The thing that makes them want you to stop creating is often exactly what the world needs you to keep exploring. While early experiences shape our neural foundations, our brains retain remarkable capacity for growth and adaptation throughout our entire lives. Every new connection you make, every creative risk you take, every time you navigate change successfully, you are literally rewiring your brain for greater resilience. The cities we love are always changing because they're alive, and our brains can learn to see change as an opportunity rather than a threat. Take nothing personally, and let yourself be moved by everything. Your environment shapes your brain shapes your choices, and your choices shape your environment. The places that formed you are still forming others. Every environmental challenge is neural training for the next one. Just keep going. Your brain is built for this.